Okay, damn it. Next time my buddies tell me they want to take a trip to Korea, I gotta remember to specify which one. But anyway, what's up? It's Buckshot. Welcome back to the channel. The desert island debate. It feels like most everyone has had this kind of discussion with their friends and family. To put it simply, if you were stuck on a desert island and you can only have X amount of Y, what would you bring? Whenever I have this sort of conversation with people, it's always about some kind of entertainment, including movies, video games, books, and of course, music. Now, I think a lot of people are quick to treat the question the same as something like, what are your favorite albums? But I would argue that this scenario asks for more critical thinking. You're stuck on an island presumably for the rest of your life, so whatever you pick is whatever you're stuck with for basically forever. Of course, there's always that one smartass who tries to ruin the debate by saying, oh, if I'm stuck on an island, how am I listening to these albums? If I got a record player, how am I powering it? If I have a phone, then I can have like literally hundreds of albums downloaded. And can I use that same phone to call for help and get off the island? Listen, douchebag, how about for once in your life, you use this gift we humans have called imagination and accept a situation where you just have a bunch of albums and the means to listen to them. The point of the question isn't to try to find a way to win and get off the island. We're asking ourselves if we could pick only 5 albums to listen to for the rest of our lives, what would we pick? It's a question I think most music nerds have asked themselves at the very least, which is why for today's video, I'm gonna sit down and decide, if I were to be stuck on a desert island and can only have 5 albums with me, what would I bring? Before anything else, I should disclose compilations and greatest hits releases are not in the running. Just like the people who try to break the question with logic, it just feels like some cheap sort of metagaming to try and win the question. A lot of the fun is lost when the other guy's answer is, oh, this release was actually 4 albums together, but it still counts as 1. If I'm discounting greatest hits, I feel I also can't include live albums. Many of those feel like kind of a greatest hits just in a live setting, so for this specific list, we're sticking to purely individual studio releases. That includes singles and EPs. With that out of the way, let's get our list together. Now, as I said earlier, people are most likely to be thinking of their favorite albums and bands in general, and to be honest, it's where my mind first went to as well. Though, thinking about it more, I definitely want variety in my selection. If all I bring is 5 metalcore albums, I'm sure I'm gonna get sick of all of them fast. I'm also sure that I want variety among the tracks in my albums too, just so I have more song options to fit whatever mood I'm in. So now I'm looking at bands and albums that not only bring that variety, but also consistent quality, which definitely helps narrow my choices down. They quickly became one of my favorites in general, so I definitely want a Sleep Token album included. Yeah, get your comments out, how dare I include Sleep Token, they're fake metal, but I don't care. Not only do I enjoy them, but I also do think every one of their releases fit my criteria. Now the question is, which am I picking? The singles and EPs are already out of the running. Don't get me wrong, these are some of my favorite songs in their whole catalog, but if the idea is that I'm spending the rest of my life here, I definitely want releases I can get more overall value out of. And in that regard, I think for my first choice, I'm gonna go for my personal favorite Sleep Token album, Take Me Back to Eden. Sundowning is awesome, but there's a couple of songs that I'm honestly not a big fan of. Some awesome highs, but some lackluster lows. This Place Will Become Your Tomb is objectively a more consistent listen, but with the exception of some tracks, I've never been itching to listen to it over and over again. Even in Arcadia is also a consistently great album. I've even named it as one of my favorite albums of 2025 on my podcast, but it also feels like one of those albums that I can only get the most enjoyment from if I'm listening to it all in one go. That's another thing I'm considering. I want the albums I choose to be enjoyable, whether I'm listening to it all at once or just a couple personal favorites, which is why Take Me Back to Eden comes out on top. Not only does it include some of my all-time favorite Sleep Token songs, it's also a record I can go back to a lot, both to give it a full listen or just some select songs. The only song off the album I'm meh about is Are You Really Okay, but it's not like it's unlistenable. My eye might twitch when I hear that acoustic guitar, but I can tolerate it. We got our first choice locked in, and for my second, I'm narrowing it down to another one of my favorite bands, Tool. I never outright mentioned it here before, but for at least several years of my life, I could very confidently say that Tool was my favorite band, period. Just like Sleep Token, it now comes down to just picking only one of their albums, but each release is so stylistically different from each other that it definitely requires a little bit more thought. Undertow was great and also my introduction to the band, but I'd say the qualities of Tool's music that make them unique and that I enjoy the most weren't fully realized here yet. Anima is my favorite Tool album and easily one of my favorite albums of all time, but a good chunk of it is made up of interludes. Again, Desert Island. I need the most bang for my buck here. I liked Fear Inoculum enough too, but out of every release, I just don't find myself in the mood for it very often. So for my second album, I'm choosing Lateralis. It really did come down to Lateralis or 10,000 Days. Both these are long without feeling dragged out, have amazing instrumentals, and enough variety among their tracks to make both of them strong contenders. This choice is made more out of pure personal preference. I like the songs a little bit more, and in my opinion, this album features a lot of Justin Chancellor's best bass lines. Not just Schism, but other songs like Disposition, Reflection, The Grudge, Lateralis's title track. So far, there's a bit of a pattern with our choices. Not only are both of them prog metal, but also both very emotionally intense records. I definitely want my next choice to have a more upbeat, feel-good sound. Something that'll really elevate the joy of never having to deal with other people ever again. I'm thinking of groups that border between pop and alt-rock. Your Gorillaz, Cage the Elephant, MGMT. That's where my head's at right now. So for my third choice, I'm gonna be going with one of my go-to comfort albums, Foster the People's Torches. Pumped Up Kicks was such a cultural phenomenon that it arguably overshadowed the rest of the album, which sucks because honestly, this whole album to me is perfect. Every song off this record is so catchy and somehow maintains this relaxing but high energy pop rock sound without any of it sounding the same. This is already an album I'm quick to put on whenever I just want to relax. Everyone needs one like that, and that's why I have no problem including it on my list. We're 3 for 5 now, and honestly, this is where things get a little bit more tricky for me. I'm gonna go back to broadly genres that I just want to make sure I include, and thinking about that, I definitely want a very heavy, very fast-paced album, something either thrash or metalcore. For as much as I love thrash, I feel a lot of thrash albums, even the all-time classic ones, are not too long, and even then have too many similarities among their songs that they'll quickly start to just blend into each other. Metalcore, on the other hand, not only keeps the fast and heavy rhythm sections that I can rage to, but the added emphasis on melody allows me to more easily listen to it in a more casual setting. So that's where I'm leaning towards. Even though I can already think of some strong contenders, I'm still concerned that there isn't enough diversity within them that they won't eventually just start sounding the same if I keep listening to it over and over again, which is why for my fourth choice, even though it may not be an all-time favorite, it's at least a metalcore album I could say I won't get tired of anytime soon. Bring Me the Horizon's Post-Human Next Gen. There's a few reasons for this choice. Bring Me the Horizon were one of my first introductions to metal as a whole, so I honestly do feel some obligation to bring them with me. While there are albums that I think are better, and I definitely have way more connection to, Next Gen's tracks again have such a wide diversity that keeps the whole album fresh, especially with the heavier usage of sampling and electronica, but in a way that feels like a genuine elevation of typical metalcore with songs like Kool-Aid, R.I.P., and Limousine. And with that, we're down to our last album to pick, and this is really a tough choice. As I've been making this list, I've seriously been trying to be as honest with myself on what albums I truly wouldn't get tired of. And while I am happy with my choices thus far, I feel it still doesn't yet fully reflect all the music that's resonated with me. For my last choice, I want a true classic record. Classic rock I feel is such a loose and inaccurate term these days, especially with how stuff from the early 2000s is now being considered classic rock. Like, no. What I want is a classic hard rock or metal album from the 70s. Even though most of my music taste is towards more modern genres, I still have a lot of love and appreciation for the old stuff. Nearly everything on my list has in some way or another been influenced by those classic bands like Zeppelin, Sabbath, Clash, King Crimson. And as someone who does music on the side, I could say I do as well. Yeah, as time goes on and more great music keeps coming out, these records are probably gonna go from old to fucking ancient, but that doesn't mean that they will not always be records that are worth listening and remembering. And that's why, for my last choice, I'm going with Black Sabbath's Volume 4. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I was struggling between choosing a Sabbath record or a Zeppelin record. Those are the two bands from that era that I could say I still listen to almost religiously, so I already knew it was gonna be something from one of them. Musicianship across both of them is very impressive. They both shown the ability to play a wide range of genres, but Sabbath has always been the band that I've liked just a little bit more. I think it's definitely because of the more overall doomier, heavier sound, but I still always loved how experimental and genre-bendy Zeppelin was. If I was to only have one album, I want something that showcases both of that, which is why I think Volume 4 is the best choice. I would actually argue that this is the most Zeppelin-esque Black Sabbath record from that classic Ozzy era. It has some of the greatest metal songs with Supernaut and Saint Vitus Dance, while also showing just an amazing range of song styles done right. I genuinely couldn't care at all for changes when I was younger. Now that I'm an adult, hearing it makes me want to cry my eyes out. And I will state here and now that Under the Sun is one of the greatest closers to an album that I have ever listened to. Again, just a blend of everything I could ever want out of a truly classic hard rock record. And if I somehow find some weed on this island, then I know what I'm putting on that night. and that would be my Desert Island albums. I think this was the first time I truly sat down and thought about my decisions. Usually whenever I try to have this discussion, it usually derails into the aforementioned favorite/best albums or, well, how am I playing them arguments. It was a tough list to make, but that is where the fun comes from. It asks you to actually think critically about your choices, and you may end up surprising yourself picking albums that you've never even considered before. There were a ton of bands and albums that I would have loved to include, but you gotta have reasonable numbers in order to keep the stakes high and the game fun. Who knows, maybe someday I'll do a part 2 and I could talk about the 10 albums I could listen to for the rest of my life. It would be a great opportunity to just add more and have a more diverse catalog. I would love to get that thrash album in, also would love to get a deathcore album too. Maybe even like another like alt-rock pop album, just so Torches isn't the only one. My current top 5 can totally change at that point too. I would love to hear what other people have to say, not just on my choices, but also what they would bring with them and their reasons. If you do want to keep the discussion going, please give your thoughts in the comments below, or join my new Discord server using the link in the description. Either way, I want to thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. That mob from the end of my Slayer video is still outside, and while I'm totally content with just staying in my apartment forever and not interacting with society ever again, I am starting to run out of food. So if you did enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe. It really does support me and the channel, and hopefully I will be able to DoorDash some groceries.